Do you know the difference between an entrepreneur and a CEO? How about why it's good to have another professional look at your company? Learn why what works in corporate America doesn't translate into a small business, and why you need to change your mental game when you grow your business, and why you need to learn to let go of control for your company in order to grow. Join me today as we speak with 𝐦𝐢𝐬𝐬, known as the CEO Confidant. Hi, this is Bob Poole. Welcome to the Water Cooler Hangout. For over 40 years, I've been helping people like you grow and prosper. Please join me and my guests as we share real-life stories about sales, marketing, creativity, and leadership. Need help in moving to the next level? Find out how others have done it by listening to the Water Cooler Hangout. Hi, everyone. I'm here today with 𝐦𝐢𝐬𝐬. He is known as the CEO Confidant. He has empowered more than 1,500 CEOs in 33 different countries. Born near Barcelona, he has lived in 8 countries and speaks 5 languages. He's based in Texas and has an international foundation called Wisdom for Kids that he launched over 4 years ago that has a goal of helping underprivileged kids in Latin America become entrepreneurs using their local resources. Good morning, Angel. How are you?
Good morning. Very well. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good. How are things in Texas these days?
Well, Texas, it's January 2021, right? So I think, things are great here. I mean, we're really having it's beyond the actual circumstances. I would say things are pretty well. The people are going back to work, there's a lot of actually openings. So I think that we're doing pretty well. I actually read the other day that Dallas, the average reopening of offices in the country, in the main cities in the country, is around 28%. In Dallas is almost 50%.
Wow.
So I guess the economic activity here in Dallas is really ramping up back again.
So I guess the commercial real estate people are happy that that's going on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, as you know, if they compare it to 2019, maybe not so much, but obviously comparing year over year, absolutely. No, the real estate business is picking up again.
Yeah, that's great. Here, we still have a lot of vacant buildings, but there are a lot of job openings. If I drive up and down the streets around here, I see signs, which you hardly ever see out in front of, small companies, help wanted, please, kind of thing. I saw one that actually big letters, please, on it. So, and that was a manufacturing company. So I guess, they're really, there's plenty of opportunities here if you want to take advantage of them.
Exactly. I mean, manufacturing means that, they're building stuff, and this is stuff that people need. So that's good news. Very good news.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear your story about how you lived in 8 countries and how you ended up settling in Texas and how you got started coaching CEOs. So let's start.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to say, although my mom and my dad, they don't speak any foreign language, I have to say that very early on, they wanted me to learn. I mean, as I was born in Barcelona, south of the French border, my mom and my dad early on put me to learn French in school and then English at the same time. So, fast forward, after, when I graduated high school, I was already able to speak fluently both English and French. And I would definitely say that that's one of the reasons why, I was so internationally like-minded. I remember then going to college, and immediately I got involved with international, internships. So I signed up for an organization. Eventually I became the president of that organization during my college time. And I started having internships in different countries. So every summer I would have an internship in a different country. And I remember that there was one specific country that I liked so much that they actually extended my stay there. I asked for my professors, my teachers, to allow me to be there for longer. That was Finland. So I ended, I finished my college degree, and again I had so much international exposure that in the 90s, late 90s, I said, okay, so why don't I start my career, and besides having lived for short periods of time in the several countries, why don't I really move out and go to another country? And that, took me to the UK, and then I went to live to Mexico, and then to Cuba, and then eventually to the US.
Great, great. And you picked Texas.
Yes, that's a good, exactly. The reason why I picked Texas, everybody is asking me, why did you pick Texas? Because actually the company I was working with at that time, they helped me relocate from Mexico to the US. They told me, hey, where would you like to go? And at that time I had a business partner in Mexico, and she's American. She lives in Florida. And she told me, hey, why don't you try a place in the north of Dallas called Plano? They have an extraordinary school district, and I have 3 kids. So at that point in time, 10 years ago, it was really important for me to have a good school district because I wanted my kids, to have a good education. So I flew here. I came for a scouting trip here in Plano, actually live in Plano, north of Dallas. And I had a meeting with that lady and her husband. She was actually one of the deputy superintendents in the district. And I loved everything they told me about the district. So actually it was the school of my kids, which made me move to Dallas, and I could have moved anywhere in the country.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Very good. Plano. I have a question for you about Plano.
Absolutely.
I have been a fisherman most of my life, and there's a company called Plano that makes all kinds of fishing cases and fishing stuff. Are they located in Plano? Do you know?
Oh my God, that's a difficult one.
Well, I have no idea. We'll have to look it up.
Obviously, I will Google it after the interview today.
All right.
I really don't know, but what I can tell you is that Plano has been attracting so much business in the last 5 years. I mean, you wouldn't recognize it. I know that you've been here in the area because you used to have business here in the area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But Plano has grown so much. I mean, just I think it was 3 years ago, we attracted the headquarters of Toyota.
All right.
So thousands of people relocated from California. And this is just an example. There are continuously businesses relocating to north of Texas here in the Plano area. So, and again, as I said before, the school district is great. So it's a great place to relocate, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Yeah, you mentioned the internships. I was talking to a guy by the name of Trav Bell. You might have never heard of him, but he's also called the bucket list guy.
Okay.
And I was interviewing him last week, I think it was. And in fact, we did a podcast. It'll be on, I think, next week. And one of the things he said that he recommended, because he's the bucket list guy, is to tell kids, get the internships, get as many as you can.
Absolutely.
Do one. Do another, and that's what you just said. I mean, that's a great thing. How much did that contribute, do you think, to what you're doing now?
I mean, let me tell you a story, because every single one of those internships were amazing. The first one, as I was not very well ranked on that organization in my college, I actually took probably the last or one of the few remaining options for me to go as an internship, and I had to take Czechoslovakia. At that time, it was still a communist country.
Right.
Okay. So the night I was packing, and my father that was the 80s, 86, 87. My father gave me $300 for an entire month to be in Czechoslovakia, right? I actually was going to the eastern part of Czechoslovakia. And it was an extraordinary story. And I will never forget, because guess what happened the night before I was leaving? I was packing. It was so late. I wanted to eat something. I had not eaten anything because I was so nervous. And I had one of these big, massive machines that they cut ham and they cut salami and they cut these things. I cut my finger 6-7 hours before. I mean, that's a true story. I still have the scar here on my finger.
Yeah.
So imagine going to ER and having everything done, and I couldn't hold my luggage because it was so heavy. I couldn't use it was my right hand. Right. Anyway, long story short, I eventually made it to Prague and then to the eastern part, and I stayed on a hostel, in a youth hostel, and we were 25, young adults, young men and women, from many different countries in the world. And I was exposed to all those countries I had never almost heard of: Qatar, Jordan, people from Argentina, people from Brazil. It was a blast. I mean, for the first time in my life, I was exposed to so many different cultures. And I think I spent 45 days, maybe 2 months in Czechoslovakia.
Oh, wow. And
I was working, my internship was in a university itself, and I was helping a team. I was a computer engineer my degree was in computer engineering, or I was starting, So I was helping this university in that place, Žilina is the name of the city, to actually optimize the train graphs, so the train network in the country. So it was fascinating to to go from a capitalistic country to a communist country and learn all those things and be exposed to so many cultures. Oh my God, I would recommend every single student to take as many internships as they can to the most remote areas in the world to learn what life is about, Bob.
Yeah, no, I agree. As I told Trav, I had told my kids that when they were, like 18, they didn't listen to me, but they took the usual route, and went to college here and did the, the usual track. And they're doing great, and they're fine, and they're very successful. But I've traveled a lot myself, and I seeing all the different cultures and meeting different people, and they become friends for life. They become friends. You have memories. Your entire future is changed by being with them in their own worlds. I mean, that's my experience.
I agree. And you never forget those lessons. And you know what? It allows you to put in perspective what a lot of people say like loudly. And let me give you an example, right? I mean, I'm extremely, I am the person that for the last 12 months I've been building bridges, as opposed to, I'm always trying to bring everybody together. And when people speak about communism, I would have loved them to live for 2 months in Czechoslovakia, or as I did, 1 year in Cuba. I would love them to have that personal experience to really live in a place during that time,
right? Because
they would really know what they're talking about. Right. It's as you obviously you have a podcast and the power of a conversation, the power of a word, right? But how many people lightly use words and conversations without really knowing anything? And you said it yourself. You've also traveled a lot, right? So unless you do that and you really try to get to know the culture and the people to the places that you go, you just visited, you don't really know anything. That's why, I really value having these conversations in which you are really able to, pick those things, which I think it's important, and not just be like carried away by the general, verbiage and the general conversations that are going out there. Just, stay in your center, keep your power, and do your own research to know exactly, how things are really like in the world.
Yep. No, I agree. I have a friend who's worked with me for years. She does she's a graphic artist, and she is from a communist country. She grew up in one of I forget now exactly which part of it was might have been Romania when it was communist. But anyway, she has said to me many times the same thing. It's like, people need to have lived and seen, lived under communism before they, are out there saying, this is a good thing. No, it's not. So anyway, yeah, she's pretty sharp. She's got a sharp tongue on her too. So she jumps on people pretty quickly about it. So anyways, little change of pace here. How did you end up coaching CEOs?
Well, so the thing is, first of all, my international career, let's say traveling or working internationally, started right out of college. Working internationally I decided to stay at my own college and working for what is here in the US, the president. In Europe is the rector of a university. Okay. So there was an opening at the rector's office, and I said, and it was an opening for international relations. I said, oh my God, that's awesome. I'm going to love this. So I started working for the university, for the rector. I would go with the rector, to many places, developing relationships. So I started to consistently travel through Europe and travel to the Americas, and that was what started me, let's say, on the relationship business. And my first real sales business, sales job, was in the 90s when I started working for an American software company in London. And that company had a very clear, precise strategy of how to conduct business. They would call always up in the organizations. Calling up means calling high in the organizations, right. Yep. Meaning that you would always call the C-levels, the CEO, blah, blah, blah. So my first job was actually sitting in London, calling C-level executives trying to get through the gatekeepers as inside sales guy, okay? And I was calling to Spain, to Portugal, to France, and then I started calling to the Nordic countries, even to Germany, and all the time, trying to, talk to the gatekeepers and get past them, and then talk to the CEO. So I was actually setting appointments for my field reps, for my field sales reps. And that's how I started literally becoming comfortable talking to C-level executives and being able to consistently reach out to them. And that started really, like I said, oh my God, so I'm learning this. I mean, talking about making literally hundreds and hundreds of calls every week.
Yeah, cold calling CEOs.
Exactly.
Yeah, lots of fun.
So as soon as I had my first field rep opportunity, I started doing the same. So guess what? When you start doing something so much and so often, you eventually become at some point, up to some extent good doing that. And then you start advising them, right? You start advising them on picking certain technologies, on doing certain things. And that's how I became, let's say, the trusted advisor of the CEOs, because I had become comfortable reaching out to them, and then the value proposition of the companies I was working with was good enough to be able to be at that level all the time, providing them something that would help them both with their businesses and sometimes even with their lives. Because as you know, when you're a salesperson and you become a trusted advisor for someone's business, it's very common that they also ask you, hey, what would you do in this other area of my life? Because it's just someone that they trust. Speaking of relationships, it's the exact same thing. It's not that important in which industry you work. What is really important is that you are able to develop those relationships of trust that eventually will help both. I mean, we are not perfect. Even if you have a very successful business or a very successful life, we are all flawed. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah. We still have those fears. We still think, there's certain things, we have some certain, limiting beliefs. And you said it. I mean, I have 3 kids, you have kids. I wished I had this, I had done this. I wish I had done that, right? But still, we have to allow them to be themselves, because they will have to be by themselves, and they will have to develop their lives and, their partnerships and their businesses by themselves. So we have to allow them to grow.
Right. So what's the difference between an entrepreneur and a CEO? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that internally, most of the CEOs I've met and I've known, they are entrepreneurs, mm-hmm. because they consider themselves, obviously they have to report to a board of directors, and they have to, sometimes it's like going to the principal's office when they go to the board to report their numbers, their quarterly numbers, their fiscal numbers, whatever that is. But still, they are the ones that they are leading the pack, so they're still the ones taking the risk. They're still the ones leading to the rest of their teams by example. They're still the ones who are fully aware of the financial implications of their business decisions. So I think that they have a lot in common. And eventually, obviously, every entrepreneur, as far as they like, growing their businesses, they are going to, become the CEOs of their own companies. But I have also to tell you something. Interestingly enough, probably, I think that not everybody that is good starting a business eventually are good as the CEO of the company. And let me elaborate on that.
Exactly.
Because I think that maybe some people could be maybe better a president or a chairman of their own company rather than the CEO, because the CEO is someone that is wired differently, I would say. It's someone that takes action. It's someone that is looking for how to make this risk, to convert this risk, into something which is favorable for the company, how to make it valuable for the company. And then they spot opportunities, but from spotting an opportunity to make it a real product or service that can serve a certain market segment, these are 2 completely different stories.
Yeah, I've noticed, I've worked with entrepreneurs and CEOs, And one of the toughest things for a lot of entrepreneurs is to make that leap from being an entrepreneur who have their own company. You know, they founded it, it's their baby. Sometimes it's just them. And then as it grows, it's one or two or maybe 20 or 30 people. But at some point, you know, it has to become not, you know, you have to have someone there that has some other qualities, some executive operational qualities that a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm having trouble talking today, don't have. That it just isn't in their makeup. A lot of them have, you know, and I can speak from experience too on this because I've started a number of companies myself. You know, my attention to detail after a certain point goes out the window. You know, I get bored, and that's when you have to have someone else come in who really knows what they're doing. But a lot of entrepreneurs can't trust the people that they can't make that, you know, here, trust you. I'm going to give you my baby. It's a psychological problem to make that shift, and it's also our challenge, I should say, and it's also a business challenge to go from one to the other.
Exactly, and that's why I think it's always nice to have another set of eyes and another brain to look into your corporation and to look into your entrepreneurial venture, however you want to call it. I think it's always important to look for help. Very often I'm being asked, you know, when you transition from corporate America to become an entrepreneur, what is one of the most important mistakes that you made? And definitely not asking for help, not looking for help fast enough, soon enough. That's definitely one of my main mistakes. I wish I had hired someone immediately right out of the gate to help me with a few different things. You know, we tend to think, and you will probably resonate with this too, we tend to think that being in corporate America, you know everything. And when you actually transition and you are by yourself, you realize that what worked in corporate America not necessarily works on your world, on your new world as an entrepreneur. And I'm not talking about support systems, which is obviously a big difference because you go from having a lot of support systems to just being yourself and trying to build yours, right? I'm talking about that the strategies that we're working on one place don't necessarily work in the other, right? So, and there's also this mental game that you have to be able to master. You have to change your mental game,
right?
Because it's completely different. I remember the company I left, my last corporate employer. Actually, they gave me a very nice package, and they also gave me this outplacement company to be with me. And they said, hey, you go there and you decide whatever you want to do. They will help you to become an entrepreneur faster. They will help you if you want to find another job, whatever that is. But guess what? I was in the same room for a couple of months. It was in the same room with people that were looking for a job. Mm-hmm. And they were all executives of large corporations. And I was the only one that was an entrepreneur and wanted to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. It was so funny. Nobody wanted to be an entrepreneur but me on that meeting. And I was going to a lot of meetings with many different people. Unfortunately, in 2010, there were a lot of people being laid off.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason. But so not everybody is also prepared to embrace what it entails. And I think that people have to make an informed decision. And I'm sure that listening to us and listening to, many other episodes of your podcast, Bob, people are actually realizing if they are a good fit and that's the right journey for them in their lives.
Yeah, and sometimes it isn't, and I've had to tell people that. I'm sure you have too, over my time of working with, companies. I've had to say, listen, you need help. And if you can't let go, if you can't hire that help, if you can't trust, then we've got a problem because you're not going to grow anymore. You're going to stagnate. I had a recent client who started the company. It got bought. It went public. He was still there, but he couldn't let go. And the new CEO, finally, they let him go. I mean, he had a big package and everything. I mean, he, all that stuff. But yeah, he just couldn't make that change. And he still wanted it, he still wanted that control, every day-to-day control. So anyway, yeah, that's an interesting conundrum that people that are entrepreneurs face a lot of times if they grow. So what stops CEOs from being extraordinary? Because there's good ones and then there's extraordinary ones. And I have an idea, but I'll let you tell me.
Well, I can tell you my experience. I think that it's how good of a leaders they are, besides being a CEO.
Perfect. That's exactly the word I was going to use. We are in sync here.
You know, because I've had myself both kinds of CEOs myself in the companies I work with. I don't know, probably I've had myself, 7, 8 CEOs. And there's a big difference between the ones that were really aligned with the rest of us, that were really taking care of us, that were really take the phone and talk to us, that they really, they were there for us all the time, and everybody would respect them, and everybody, would do so much more for the company because of them. And at the same time, there will be these other CEOs that maybe they had been appointed and they never made an effort to be with the rest of the team. They didn't make an effort to be part of the organization. Again, it's a matter of, you mentioned control. I think that it comes from very early on in our lives, that obviously our parents, because they want us to thrive and they want us to grow, right? Yeah, right. They want us to be, safe. They always control us, right? And I think that that's one of the reasons why we always want to control. And I think that, in organizations, in order to keep the control and to keep everybody accountable, unless there's a high level of engagement, you will never keep people accountable. And also, it's not fair if you have not educated people to keep them accountable. So again, how much does a CEO, how much of his time does a CEO take to really be the leader of that team, to really educate that team, to really make a difference by educating that team, so that team is extremely engaged, so that then he's earned or she's earned the right to keep everybody accountable. Right. But it's not the other way around. And that's definitely what I have always seen in organizations.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of organizations that someone gets appointed, like you were saying, or they, and I'm going to say this, they come up through finance or something like that, and they're put in charge of a company that, their primary goal of the company is to sell products. And this person has no time in sales, no time in marketing, and, came up through, the bean counter, basically, if you will. And so one day they're the CEO. Now, I saw this happen in a Fortune 100 company. I'm not going to name the name of it, but a Fortune 100 company. And I actually spent 3 hours sitting next to, I was a captive on a bus, if you will, going to the Olympics when it was in Lake Placid. I sat next to the CEO. He had just gotten into that job, but he'd been with the company a long time, but he came up through finance. Right. And in 3 hours, we've had more conversation right now in the 20 minutes than I had in 3 hours with him. He just could not relate. He wasn't, he just couldn't carry a conversation. And I don't think he liked salespeople. I think that was, I think there was a trust issue with salespeople and marketing. It was just outside of his, his box, so. Yeah, and he didn't do well either. That was
he didn't?
No, didn't do well. It was a few years, and they sold that whole division off of that wow. Fortune. Yeah, so leadership is the key. That's the difference, I think, between good CEOs and the great CEOs.
Yeah, we
need more leaders today.
Totally, and not only in corporations. I think we need more leaders all over the place.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, I would like to say leaders that really walk the talk, really that walk the talk. I think we started the conversation talking about the same thing, walking the talk, right. Walking the talk. Do they really walk the talk? Don't take anything by its face value. One of my obsessions with my kids is don't take anything by the face value. Do your own research. Let me tell you an example. One of my kids, his science fair project last year was on a very controversial subject. Very controversial. It took to us almost 2 months to get it approved to the school district. Let me tell you what the subject was.
Yeah, I need to know. Yeah.
The art of manipulation.
Oh, okay.
So, and he said, I would love to know more, and I would love to study more, and I would like to, but he had to change the subject, to change the title many times. He had to change, the experimental, process and structure of the project and everything until it was approved. But, I think that, we as, let's say, as people that talk to a lot of people, have a lot of conversations, we know that conversations are powerful. Right. And we know that right now there's some people that are gonna needed to listen to this message today, right? It is the nature of the beast, is like people listen to conversations, and people, make decisions upon those conversations, and that might inspire them at some point in time. So I think that being aware of the way things are being said and the way that we should really understand them, I think that that's also something that our leadership should teach us to do. It should be maybe not elementary, but maybe a middle school mandatory subject.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I remember my son when he was probably about 10, 12, somewhere in that neighborhood. I was putting together a workshop on behavioral styles, and which uses NLP kind of techniques, right, and some other stuff. Yep. So, I mean, manipulation, it could be a part of that. It's easy. I mean, you could take that and manipulate people. That's the dark side of it. So understand, and it's a psychological, you talk about psychological reciprocity, I think earlier, and all those kinds of things that we know are factual and people respond to. So he was curious. He's like, "What are you doing?" And so I told him a little bit, and he wanted to know more. So I told him more, and then suddenly I see this light bulb go on in his head, and I'm like, "Wait a minute!" I'm just like, "Okay, time out here." I can see you're sitting there thinking, "Well, how can I use this to manipulate other people?" And he was thinking that, and he goes, "Well, I wouldn't." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, you can't." I said, "That's the dark side. We can't go there." So I think teaching people, I think what you're saying, the power of words and the power of understanding what the meaning in words, it would be a great thing they should teach, among a few other things, but we'll save that for another day.
And guess what? Last year in 2020, as obviously, we were isolated and, we were locked up or down mm-hmm. so many times. Let's say, language becomes more relevant because maybe you were consuming more knowledge, maybe on TV, maybe on social media. So it becomes extremely relevant and extremely important that you develop your own criteria. And when your son asks you about manipulation, which is a very legit question, right? Very legit question. But then it's when you, as a parent, you have to say, yeah, you could do that, but this is why you shouldn't do it. And then we as a family, we stand on those principles. Right. And that's what we do. And that's what makes our community this way. And that's what makes our country this way. Again, I'm not talking politics. I'm just talking about something. That's something that we should all talk about on a over a meal conversation all day long.
Right. It's life. It's listening. Listening first, as I like to say. Exactly. So, wisdom for kids. Tell me all about it. I want to hear about wisdom for kids.
Absolutely. So, during all my years in Latin America, I worked in Latin America almost 15 years, but 5 of them actually was already living here. But I was working there for a long time. And I was every single time I was going to visit some of those manufacturing plants of those large corporations that I was selling to the CEOs and C-levels. It was funny, but obviously all those corporations, all those manufacturing plants were in the outskirts of the cities or maybe in rural areas. So that means that every time I was going to close those deals or have those negotiations with those C-level executives, before getting into those manufacturing plants, I would meet with those kids, that would ask me, "Hey, Senor, would you buy some, candies for me? Would you buy some gums? Would you allow me to keep your car safe while you are inside the plant? Would you allow me to wash your car, wash your windshield?" So I was always exposed to these very, distinct levels of wealth and social welfare, let's say, in the world, in Latin America. So fast forward, one day, one morning in 2000, it was the month of March in 2015, I was in Mexico City. I still was in Mexico. I had not had the time to return to Dallas. And I had an experience, I can only call it, I don't know, a spiritual experience, in which I started to have all those images of, you know, all those kids in need in Latin America, and all those relationships I had developed with governments and with large corporations in the continent. And it was very clear to me that I had to do something about it. It was very clear to me that nobody was more prepared than me to actually was like the liaison, the conduit of the greatness of these people out there that I could actually use to help these entrepreneurs, these underprivileged kids, to become entrepreneurs using their local resources. So after that spiritual experience, I said to myself, this is amazing. I mean, I have to do this. I have to do this. If not me, who's going to do it? So I reached out to a friend of mine and I asked him, who do you think we should also bring to the team? And he said, this gentleman is a businessman in very well known in Mexico. And then I asked him, hey, who else could we bring to the team? And he said, my dad. Why your dad? No, because my dad has been teaching, educating, you know, thousands and thousands of teachers here in Mexico. I had no idea about this. So it's like everything got into the right place, like different pieces of the puzzle got into the right place. And only 1 year later, we had already set up Wisdom for Kids as an organization. And then, as I said before, what we do is we help underprivileged kids in Latin America become entrepreneurs using their local resources. And, you know, it was just the beginning of an incredible journey. Obviously, last year we had to stop because everything is you know, it's difficult to get to places right now. And there's a lot of controls, additional controls and everything. But still, we keep in touch with all the communities that we started helping. We keep in touch with our volunteers in all those communities. And that's the best thing, you know, I mean, that's the best thing that we can do right now, is to keep that flame that we already started with our workshops while all this happens.
So what's the future for the foundation?
Yes. Well, I mean, as soon as we can, we will resume our activities face to face. You know, we will obviously have to adapt and, you know, to this new social reality in the world, but still we will reach out to those places and we will, you know, deliver our workshops. You know, we deliver workshops in which we teach the kids about self-esteem, and we do a lot of, you know, NLP and weird stuff to help them be inspired and start their journey. But still, I mean, there's still a need to do that. And because we know technology is a challenge for them. Technology is not the answer. There's a lot of communities that these guys, they might have a cellular signal in those areas, but that's completely different to having a computer to be connected with us. You know what I mean? So right. We still have to go there. We still have to do that. And there used to be 81 million kids in Latin America living in poverty, 81 million kids in 2012, where we took the last report done by UNICEF. We wouldn't be surprised if we are very close to 100 million right now after COVID.
Ah, jeez. So what's the best thing that the average person can do to help?
Well, I mean, obviously the best thing is we have had, from authors, we have had a lot of donations of kids' books. Mm-hmm. We really take all sorts of books in English that we are able to take to those areas. Remember that those kids will never learn English unless an adult receives the book or a bunch of books, and the adult starts teaching English to the kids. You know, typically adults in the communities, they have had some sort of exposure to the English language, so they're able to learn something, and they're able to speak some or understand some English. But bringing more books, taking more books, that's the easy thing. And obviously, if you go to wisdomforkids.today, you are actually able to become a volunteer, and you can start sending books our way. That's one way. The other way, obviously, is by donating. Starting a kid in his entrepreneurial journey, it only costs $10. I mean, really, that only that. So it's very, very, we are very effective with what we do, and using the money that we get. You can also make a donation on our website, on wisdomforkids.today website. And if you know communities already in Latin America, and you know communities where we could, reach out to and talk to them, to talk to the community leaders and set up some sort of activity face-to-face down the road, we would love to do that too.
Okay. Well, I will definitely put the that link in the show notes. We'll have it in the show notes. And how do people get hold of you?
Thank you. Yes. So the easiest way is to send me an email. I respond all the emails, either my team or myself. The email address is very simple. It's angel, as in heaven, right? Angel, ANGEL, at @angelrebo.com. Rebo is my last name, it's spelled RIB as in boy, O.com. So it would be angel at angelrebo.com. And another very easy way to reach out to me is to go to LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post every single day. I engage on all the conversations, all the comments, all the messages. Again, I really believe in the power of a conversation, because you never know what that conversation is going to go. So, and those are the two easiest ways to reach out to me. Okay,
good. We will definitely put all that in the show notes too. So I guess one last question here. So at this point of your career, what are you most proud of? What's your proudest moment?
Probably having been able to travel so much, having been able to speak to so many people. I still get messages from time to time today of people that at some point I helped, I trained, I advised, I met, and they say, yes, I still remember you. And you will always, I will always remember your teachings. We are not really fully aware of the footprint that we are leaving behind. Really, we're not aware.
Yeah.
There's so many things that we have done great in our lives that we have forgotten. There's so many people that we have influenced, that we have impacted positively in our lives. And that's definitely the thing that I'm probably the most proud, and that's probably the reason why, if I can teach something to my kids, would be, make sure that you keep a nice Rolodex growing up, that you remember all your friends in elementary, all your friends in middle school, so that, you keep in touch with them and you grow together and you help each other together. Because if something I've learned since, all this Corona madness started, is that we as human beings, we have to get together much more than ever before in the history of humankind.
I agree. It's been a pleasure talking with you today, and I thank you very much for being here.
Likewise, Bob. Thank you very much for having me, and obviously thank you everybody who's been patient enough to listen to us today.